Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cast in Order of Appearance, where I go through each of the units in the Harlequins codex. So today we are going to be looking at the troupe, or players, whichever you prefer. So the Harlequins troupe are the main and only troupe choice for the Harlequins faction. We're going to go through the lore, a few of the stats, and then a couple of the combos. Let's get started. So it's worth noting that no one actually starts their existence as a Harlequin. What this means is that the Harlequins need to be recruited in some ways. You've got all of the different Eldari factions. You've got the Drakari, you've got the Craftworlds, you've got the Exodites, probably not the Ynnari because they're recruited in a different way, but all of them can become Harlequins. So what that means is that Troop Master or just another Harlequin will either kidnap or influence one of the other Eldari to become a part of their mask. And they end up becoming pretty much like the ultimate method actor. And what I mean by that is that they have to leave behind every part of their identity, their friends, family, any of their desires, anything that they wanted to achieve in order to completely devote themselves to the part that they have to play within the troupe. Which is a really fascinating idea. So like, they're performers, they're thespians of a sort. They end up joining this group and basically leaving behind any part of their identity. Kind of a little bit like Rousseau's philosophy on the idea of giving up personal identity for the good of the state, if there are any philosophy buffs out there. And yeah, that's what they do. They end up performing and becoming essentially like an extension of the will of the laughing god Kagorak. So let's have a look at these stats for a Harlequin troupe. So a player has a movement of 8 inches, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, 4 attacks, leadership 8, and a 6+ save. So pretty good stats, and you've got 4 attacks base. I don't think there are many troupe choices that have that. It's also worth noting that after Chapter Approved, the troops did go down by 2 points each. So 2 points that you have to spend on other things or on more troops. This unit contains 5 players. It can include up to 7 additional players. So you can have a minimum unit of 5 and you can have a maximum unit of 12. Each model is armed with a shuriken pistol, Harlequin's blade, and plasma grenades. Now, war gear options. Any model may replace its shuriken pistol with a neurodisruptor or a fusion pistol. So any model. So you can replace any of the shuriken pistols with any of those 2 options. The neurodisruptor also went down in points. It's now half of the points that it was before. So it's now a viable option. Any model may replace its Harlequin's blade with a Harlequin's embrace, Harlequin's kiss, or a Harlequin's caress. Now we looked at these options before, but it's very customizable as a unit choice. So most of the time, like with most armies, you would have like an elite option where you could do this. Previously, the Trueborn or the Blood Brides in Drakari, or with the veteran squads in the Space Marines. But with the troops, you can do that. You can customize all of them with any of these options, which is very, very versatile. It's a very interesting niche that the Harlequins have within their troop choices. So we've been over the weapon options before, but we can recap quickly. So a fusion pistol has a 6-inch range. It's pistol 1. It has strength 8, AP -4, and d6 damage, and if the target is within half range of this weapon, roll 2 dice when inflicting damage and discard the lowest. So a very powerful weapon. The neurodisruptor is 12 inches, pistol 1, strength 4, -3 AP, d3 damage, except against vehicles where it's only damage 1. So it could have now, in particular, very interesting niche against multi-wound infantry, against Primaris, for example, against Grotesques, who are also sort of coming back really, really strong into the meta. So it's an interesting weapon now, particularly now with the points drop. And the Shuriken pistol, which we get for free, is 12 inches, pistol 1, strength 4, damage 1, but on a wound roll of a 6+, it has an AP of -3. So again, not bad. Harlequin's blade, we worked out in the Troop Master video, it doesn't do anything, really. You just attack with damage 1, no AP. Would be nice to have like -1 AP or something on that weapon, but you know, is how it is. A Harlequin's Caress is also a melee weapon. It has strength +2, -2 AP, and 1 damage. A Harlequin's Embrace has +1 strength, -3 AP, and 1 damage. And a Harlequin's Kiss has +1 strength, -1 AP, and D3 damage. We've also got Plasma Grenades, which are a range 6-inch grenade, D6, strength 4, -1 AP, 1 damage weapon. Pretty good, yeah? So let's have a look at the abilities. We have the Flip Belt, which means you can move across models and terrain with just ignoring them completely. We've got a Hollow Suit, so all of the models have a 4+ invulnerable save. So you're getting the theme here. Everything in the Harlequin's army has a 4+ invulnerable save. You have a 50-50 chance of just ignoring damage. Very strong. And they also have Rising Crescendo, so they can advance and charge, and they can fall back and still shoot and or charge. Now, notice it says you can advance and charge and not advance, shoot and charge. So that could be quite difficult as well when you're using pistol weapons like the fusion pistols or the neurodisruptors. However, as we've seen, we have a base of 4 attacks, so they're meant to be maybe a close combat unit, but you could make them into a shooting pistol unit. Now let's have a look at some of the combinations that we often see in competitive play, what you might want to do with your Harlequin troop. Now this is going to be the longest part of this video, particularly for a unit as diverse and customizable as a Harlequin troop. So as we've already stated, any single one of these models can be equipped with a variety of different war gear. And your choice of masks, so your specialization, is probably going to depend a little bit on how you want to equip your troops. And vice versa. If you know that you want to take a particular mask, then you're probably going to have to equip your troops in a certain way if you want to remain competitive. So there are lots of different things that you can think about with this, but the first thing is, do you take a minimum unit of 5 or do you take a maximum unit of 12 or something in between? So one of the most common things that we see with Harlequin's troops are putting them in the soaring spiked mask so that they can advance and shoot. Remember, no one else can do that. They can do this when they're embarked on transports. So we would have a minimum unit of 5 or a unit of 6, because a transport holds 6, and equipping them, maybe between 3 and 5 players with fusion pistols. We've seen a lot of this in competitive play, and it is a very viable option. The clown car drive-by shooting essentially is the nickname for it. So yes, we could do that. And we can use the speed and the versatility of the soaring spike mask just to give those troops the ability to really push up the field, put pressure on something, melt vehicles and tanks and monsters and all sorts of things. And it can be a very, very powerful combo. Now as well, with the points drops from Chapter Approved, you might even want to consider running them with some neurodisruptors as well, particularly if you're running something like a double battalion or a brigade, because you're saving yourself some points. If you want to get a few more tools and a few more different tricks in there, like if you want to add different stuff in there, particularly the bikes, which we're going to talk about later, taking neurodisruptors is not a bad option, and it does save you some points in the long run. You've got 6 units of troops, you might sort of start questioning whether or not you really want to spend 7 points on every single model to give them that fusion pistol. But that is one option. You could just go all out fusion pistols or all out neurodisruptors. Some people like to mix and match with that one and also give them a few melee options. So equipping some of them with maybe a Caress or with an Embrace. just to make sure that they can also do something after their transport has been destroyed. It is a good option, and it can make your troops pretty deadly and very versatile. The only issue though is that you are putting a huge amount of points into what is actually a very fragile unit. So a 4-up invulnerable save is fantastic, but it's still only a 50-50 chance. You know, how lucky are you feeling with those rolls? So if you have a unit of 5 and they can shoot with the pistols, but then the transport is destroyed and they try and attack in melee, they're still probably going to die at some point. So you have to kind of think about that one. What's the trade-off? Do you want to save points? Do you want to specialize your units? What exactly do you want to do with them? Now, the other option that a lot of people go for, and is sort of nearing what I like to do with them too, is to maximize your units in units of 12, and then you go for something like the Frozen Stars. Now, the Frozen Stars gives you an extra attack on the charge, which means that now you've got 5 attacks base on every single one of your troops. This is massive. Now, there's always the question of what you want to equip them with. So caresses tend to be very good against things like Horde, but they can also be very good against high toughness units. And that extra AP can come in very useful. So it is a very popular choice. The Embraces are slightly cheaper, so you might want to put a couple of those in. And you've got the extra AP on that as well. And it's strength 4, but it's still pretty good. But against everything like toughness 8 or higher, you're going to have a bit of a problem because you're only wounding on 6s. So even with a reroll from Troop Master, it might not be enough to be able to get you the damage that you want. The same problem comes with the Kiss. If you've got a toughness 8 target and you're wounding on 6s, even with the rerolls, it can be very difficult to get that in. So a lot of people would go Frozen Stars, lots of caresses, big units, and then use Twilight Pathways to move them up the board as quickly as possible. Now that Twilight Pathways combo can also be very useful if you're using the Silent Shroud, because the Silent Shroud has a stratagem, it's a 2 CP stratagem, in which you can ignore all Overwatch. So imagine a big scary unit of close combat troops being moved up the board twice after advancing and then charging, and then nothing can fire Overwatch at that. That can be a really devastating first turn for you, or second turn if you don't quite make it to begin with. So those are a couple of things that you might want to think about. There are, of course, plenty of other combinations, and I think an interesting one now might be with the Veiled Path. Because the Veiled Path, the trait gives you a little bit of resistance in melee, which is not necessarily the best one, but it does give you the ability to deep strike multiple units for very, very few CP. Now, remember with deep strike that you have to start 9 inches away from something. So you wouldn't want to put fusion pistols on something like that. But with the new points for the Neuro Disruptor, which has a 12-inch range, that could potentially be quite a devastating little attack. You put, a 5-man troop or even a 10-man troop with Neuro Disruptors 12 inches or within 12 inches away from your opponent, and you can just jump in there with a bunch of pistol shots, which could be a really nice little combo. Now, what I like to do personally, my favorite way of running them is to have 2 units of 10 and 2 units of 5. So I only run a single battalion at the moment. I'll be going into why in another video that I'm posting today. But I've got the 2 units of 10 with 5 caresses, and I've got the 2 units of 5 with 5 kisses. So you can see I haven't bothered with any of the pistol upgrades. And the reason for this is because if you have a toughness 3 1 wound model with a 3-up ballistic skill with no rerolls, that is quite a lot of points that you're putting into a model that is most likely going to die quite quickly and that is not necessarily going to hit your target. I can really understand why people like the fusion drive-by shooting option. I think it's very strong. I can see how it can absolutely melt tanks if you're lucky. My main issue with that is that you have absolutely no access to rerolls with Harlequins. if we had the option to reroll ones, or, preferably to reroll everything in the shooting phase, that would be just amazing. That would be, I'd take that hands down, and I would take it every time, because you could go in there and you can shoot, and in the shooting phase you're not going to get any damage back. So that is one option, but it's not necessarily my favorite. And the main reason, as I say, is because you're putting a lot of points into something that is very random. So I like to keep my troops as Frozen Stars. I like to have a versatile amount of melee options, and really capitalize on that base stat line of 4 attacks, and then giving them the extra attack with Frozen Stars. But how do you play your troops? I mean, is there a combo that I haven't mentioned? Is there a particular thing that you really like to do with them? Do you take Midnight Sorrow, for example, to really cause that disruption? Or do you like to keep minimum troops or maximum troops? What is it that you like to do with your Harlequins troops? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and as always, I will see you next time. I've been Kit. Thank you very much for tuning in. Goodbye.